happy to host you here today.
Yeah, and then thanks for inviting. So that's indeed the conversation about Bicep and the full stack application deployment to Azure using Bicep. And so the idea is relatively simple. During this workshop, I'd like to focus on infrastructure as code as much as possible and use, basically Azure Bicep as the language for that. And again, because it's infrastructure as code, it's mainly focused on the infra part. So the application that we are going to deploy is just a decent application that helps us to do some create, remove, update, delete, like basically a CRUD application. Nothing serious, but again, the idea is to explore Bicep and the possibilities of this new language. So I hope,
Sounds Yeah,
yeah,
sounds great, Evgeny. So yeah, if you have a screen to share, feel free to,
yeah.
and the floor is yours, of course. Maybe also it would be nice to hear a little bit about yourself first.
Yeah, definitely. Trying to figure out where is that button. Oh, here. Okay.
It's a nice continuation on the DevOps line of our last events. We invited actually Evgeny last time to the workshop when we talked about uh, Pulumi as a deployment tool for Azure DevOps. So Evgeny saw some attempt of ours to do so.
Yeah. So I think we're now ready to start with Bicep workshop. So let me just quickly introduce myself. My name is Evgeny Rudinsky, and I'm super happy, super excited to join you guys um, um, on this show. So the previous episode I liked very much when we explored Pulumi, which is another great approach to build your infrastructure with the general purpose language. And at that time, I thought, why not to look into something that Azure or Microsoft offers these days, and especially that's relatively new thing. Well, not that new, but it's getting a little bit more attention these days, and also because I work these days mainly with Microsoft and Azure landscape in the Netherlands, actually in a Benelux region with one of the consultant company. So we see that interest around Bicep, and more and more customers actually are asking to help them with the templating, to help them to arrange the governance around infrastructure as code using Bicep, and to help to prepare the templates, to prepare the models, and to set them according to the best practice. And again, because I attended that call where we also built this infrastructure using Pulumi, so I thought it's actually a good idea to show and to use something which is available out of the box in Azure, which is Bicep. So that's basically a little story how this idea came up and how we agreed to take a look at Bicep in the form of workshop. Now the idea is, and the just really a little bit about the expectations. So you guys who are listening in this workshop, so you are not disappointed with the end result. So as I stated earlier, it's going to be a full stack application. So we'll take a look at the decent application that I prepared for you. So that's basically an application which runs Python. Is a Flask application that serves my API. So I have a little set of endpoints available, so to create, to update, and to work with my model. So the the database itself is the PostgreSQL database. So my Python application, my Flask application, will query data from the PostgreSQL PostgreSQL database. And then in the front end, I do have a JavaScript with the Vue.js framework, and I assume my colleagues will help me maybe with some interesting key points over there. But again, the purpose of this conversation is to dive into Bicep. So this is basically the application Vue.js, which works with Python, and then underneath there is a PostgreSQL database. So the goal for me today is to spin up that application first locally, so we can take a look at it functioning properly, and then using Bicep, I will build the underlying infrastructure for that. And because I want to kind of to dive from the very beginning into Bicep and to see what exact benefits it offers to the to us. So I will use a very simple approach here. So we will spin up a virtual machine, so just infrastructure as a service model from Azure. So, and of course, that virtual machine has some dependencies like network interface card, like the network security group, the virtual network, and some other components. So we will actually build that using Bicep, and we will follow along what actually Bicep offers to us. And then, and on top of that, because I want to Dockerize my components, so basically my clients, I would like to run. So my client, which is Vue.js, I would like to run in container, and at the same time, I have reverse proxy, which is Nginx over there. So it's one container. The other container would be the Python Flask application itself, with was just a few files added to it. So that's my second container. And so those two containers I will just simply run using Docker Compose. So it's just the easiest way for me, and also for understanding perspective to orchestrate them and to do the service discovery things. Again, just for learning perspective. And then we'll try in the dev environment. We'll try to use the SQL, the PostgreSQL as another service, also Dockerized. But later on, we will also explore the managed PostgreSQL from Azure, and we will take a look at Bicep way of provisioning that. So because this architecture will need a few other components, like I would like to use also the private registry in Azure. So I will provision, again, using Bicep, Azure Container Registry, or in short ACR. And then I will make sure that my virtual machine, which needs to pull and push images from that resource, has the credential-less approach for doing that. So we will use managed identity for that. So that's another resource that I would like to provision in Azure. So with managed identity, I can say Azure who can talk to which service and with which particular role or permission. Well, depends on the way you configure that, but we will take a look at this. Let me think quickly. So that's basically the end goal. So we will build this application. Again, don't focus too much on the application. The idea is look at the Bicep and see how simply you can provision infrastructure using Bicep. So I hope this is in line with your expectations. So for those who joined the call, and if not, feel free to put your comments to the chat. Also, feel free to put your comments to the chat if you have any questions, and I will be happy to address them. All right. So let's take a look here at this quick introduction that you may have seen earlier. So what is basically Bicep? So Bicep is the domain-specific language, or DSL, which uses declarative way or declarative syntax to deploy Azure resources. So there's one way to do that is imperative, when you say what exactly has to happen in order to get that resource. An example from Azure could be Azure CLI or PowerShell with the Azure model that can help you to build your infrastructure. So things like this: AZ group create -G sample -L West Europe would be an example of imperative way of doing that. So if we run this command, at the end we will get a group and our Azure subscription, which is called sample in the West Europe environment. So of course this approach works, but the problem here with the imperative way of working is that the bigger your infrastructure grows, the more moving parts you have over there, and it's really hard to maintain this approach, because typically you have it in sort of scripts like a Bash or PowerShell script, and then you have a lot of logic underneath, like a lot of conditions, and it's really hard to keep track of all these changes. So that's why the imperative works. The imperative way of the defining infrastructure works, but yeah, typically the resources that you provision in the cloud, you really want to provision with declarative approach. Like for example, Pulumi we did last time. So here we talk about Bicep. Also a little bit about Bicep itself. If we take a look at this little diagram over here, as I said, it's basically a way to declaratively define your resources in Azure. So few remarks about Bicep. So it's a one template. It's a one template set. And as we look at this picture, we see that underneath we have a Azure Resource Manager, and then we have Azure Resource Provider. So every tool that you use to provision resources in Azure, so they always end up with Azure Resource Provider. Whether we used Pulumi last time, or maybe you use Terraform for that with the Azure Provider, so it always hits that Azure Resource Manager. So in Bicep, it's one way. In those let's say, declarative way of working, it's the other way. So REST API, for example. So here we have a quick example, again, just to get better understanding how things are organized around the resource manager and how the templates are actually used. So this is an example of the REST. So I do have a little example where I can prepare I can create a resource group. So here I have an endpoint. It's a subscription. It hits my subscription. So this is my subscription defines in the variables, and I also have authentication using the service principal arranged earlier. So I don't really need to log in to my environment. So it's already pre-logged in. And here, what I would like to have is I would like to create a resource, and that resource will be a resource group. So if you take a look at this endpoint, we see that it's a put method, and it hits the subscription, and then the special method for the resource group creation. By the way, pay attention to this API version. So in Bicep, we also will explore this. And in the Microsoft documentation, we can also explore this. So basically, you can define API version of the resource that we're going to provision. And then based on version, we may get more or less parameters or attributes returned back to us after submission. So for instance, I would like to create a resource group that will be called Azure Bicep Workshop. And again, if we explore this again, so what will happen now? So multiple imperative put calls, right? So if I hit this send button, so this will go ahead and call this particular endpoint. Again, so authentication is already made. That's why we skip that part. So I use service principal with certain role. Anyway, so by doing that put call, we just received the response back saying that your resource group has been provisioned in West US region. So the West US region, that's another parameter that we can pass along the way as well. So we can also call this list the resource groups to see what are the resource groups we have available. So, and if we scroll that a little bit, oh yeah, we don't need to scroll that, it's over here. So that's the resource group that we just provisioned. By the way, if you look at Terraform, or if you look at Pulumi like we did last time, so it actually kind of has the API, the REST API, a REST API with the provider. So every time when you, let's say, do the resource provisioning using that approach, it always goes and hits the REST API of the resource manager. So everything ends up in that resource manager, and then and the resource manager calls those resource providers. By the way, if we go to the subscription, so I'm in the portal of Azure. If you go to the subscription, so here in the subscription, you do have what is called a resource providers. Oops. Yep. Here. So those are different resource providers that you may want to explore, because sometimes in some type of subscriptions, maybe it's enterprise agreement, or there is some sort of special type of educational subscription where the resources or resource providers are disabled and you need to, or not registered, and you need to enable them first. Because, so for example, this particular resource provider is called a resource group. So if we search for group, let's pick a storage. So there's a Microsoft storage, for example, that's a provider that helps us to provision storage resource in Azure. And in order to use that, in order to use either the portal experience or the REST API experience, like Postman, for example, or Bicep or Terraform or anything else, you need to make sure that your provider is enabled. So just a little side note about this. All right, so let's get back and let's actually talk about some advantages of Bicep. So why you really would like to explore this. So first of all, it immediately supports all resource types and API versions. So remember I mentioned that API version that you can define. So basically it supports that out of the box, even the general available features or services in Azure. So there are a bunch of GAs going on even right now as we speak. So those are immediately supported in Bicep. So comparing to IRM template, by the way, there might be a question. So why should I care? Because there's Azure Resource Manager templates, and they've been here for quite a while. So why should I care about this? So the main problem with IRM templates is the complexity. So those little parentheses, those semicolons, colons, the multiple dots and the indentation, so that the JSON way of defining infrastructure in IRM template is very flexible, but at the same time, it's really complicated. And the idea that Microsoft has behind this Bicep is basically they say that, well, Bicep is like a revision of the existing Azure Resource Manager template or IRM template language. it's like a revision, which means that so they put together all the problems that they have or they hear from the users of the IRAM template, and they come up with something which is much better. So there's awesome first-class authoring experience with Bicep extension. So I have Visual Studio Code, and I encourage you also to use that. It's a very nice idea. And then you can use a lot of different extensions. And one of the extensions is basically Bicep for the Visual Studio Code. So you can provision resources, you can use the linting, you can use IntelliSense over there. It will suggest you something. It will also highlight the problems with the linting, etc. So it's a very nice. Highly recommend that. So with Bicep, we are talking about the term which is called idempotent, or in math, it means that the operation that you have, and as many operations of this type you do, it actually gives you exactly the same result. Whatever happens, it gives you exactly the same result. For example, you multiply 2 by 2, you get 4. So as many times you run this 2 by 2, you get 4. And this is what the idempotent means. In Bicep, it means that you get a template, and that template has, for example, storage count in it. And so let's just quickly take a look at this. So you have a storage count in it, and then if you deploy that template, or if you provision this template multiple times, it will do exactly the same every time for you. So doesn't matter. It will give you exactly the same thing for you. So I'll just quickly create a sandbox folder so we can just play a little bit. Oops. Oh, I have it already. Cool. So we just play a little bit with this. Oh, I even have it. So here is the little example of the Bicep template for you. So don't worry too much about those details for now. So just take a look at this. So this is 17 lines of the resource that we are going to use. So basically, it's the storage account. So the storage to keep the flat files, the blob storage. And then we just define the bare minimum number of required parameters. So there's going to be a name, and you can see immediately there is a reference to the variable, which is unique string based on location, and it also adds the RG at the end. And there's also some other things like admin, for example, and there's immediately the demonstration of linting of that Bicep extension, saying that, well, you have admin declared, but you never use that, and you will get more of that. So there are some linting rules out of the box available. You can also customize them, but it's just wonderful. By the way, each template that you deploy has a thing which is called a target scope. So the default target scope, if it's not defined, is a resource group, but you can also define to other target scopes, and this is something we explore in a minute. But this is basically a template. So the target scope is the resource group, meaning that everything that I describe over here below in the template will be deployed to my resource group, and a resource group is something that I will define as the additional parameter to my execution. So what else is interesting here is this line number 4. So this line number 4 that starts with symbol at is called a decorator, or the description decorator. So there are more decorators. We will take a look at them very soon, but this description decorator, allows me to define the description of that particular parameter or variable. So the other engineers that will reuse my model or my template, that will get a clear idea what it stands for. And I encourage everyone, and I suggest everyone to actually follow that, because again, it's all about the growth of the infrastructure. So so when your infrastructure grows, your number of templates also growing. So it's always hard to keep a track on it. So you need to come up with some sort of governance anyway.
Evgeny, can I ask some
Yep.
quick thingy?
Sure.
Yeah, what we're looking here is one bicep file. By the way, the syntax is quite cool. I think it's inspired by TypeScript, maybe. I see
Mm-hmm.
some relation there. So you mentioned that it defines target scope on the first line, but then you
Mm-hmm.
create one resource in this file, or you can specify basically many different types of resources that you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
create.
Yep. So wonderful question. I will just do how you call it, a sneak peek.
Mhm.
So what will be the end results with the templates that we are going to use today? So here I have a combination of templates. So I have a main file that actually has references to models. So this is another very big benefit of Bicep, is that you can modularize the whole template, and then those models you can reuse multiple times. Like here, this is my big template for today's workshop that we will go through, but it's it's too complicated now at the beginning, so we will do this step by step. But typically, you have you have a main file, and then you have
Mhm.
references to the models, and then with parameters you define what is different from the model to model, for example, from the environment to environment.
Mhm.
Yeah, typically you have it like this.
All right.
So
Yeah.
Bicep is like a full-scale language, right?
Yeah, it's like the main specific language is it's like a revision of the IRM template. Let's put it this way. So most everything is possible with Bicep that is possible with IRM templates. There is actually some known limitations. They are outlined in the documentation, but not that much. So I use Bicep in few customers' environments already, and we're pretty happy with this. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. So did I answer your question, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yep. Yep. Cool. So we're moving on. So we actually talked about this storage example. So I will just return back. I will close this because I think it's much better to use to do step by step. So we'll go to our sandbox, which is here. So we go to our sandbox, and so I stopped talking about. So yeah, I talked about a decorator, and I suggested to basically use decorators because they can explain to the engineers that will reuse the template. They basically will understand what it is exactly. So there is also output. So with the output, you can get basically the output of what has been provisioned here in the model. So this may be cool to have if you want to visually explore what has happened, because in the portal you can do that, and in a minute we will see that. But at the same time, you may want to refer in other models to those outputs. So for example, in my virtual machine creation in that bigger template that you just saw, there is a reference to the storage account because that account I use for the script execution. So I got a script that does some customization of the virtual machine, and instead of downloading that script from the public repository, so I prefer to use private storage, and we basically use the the endpoint, and I generate the URL for that, so to download that. But we will explore that soon. All right, so I think we can just quickly take a look at the way to provision that resource. So as you may guess, it's gonna take this template, and it's gonna provision the resource. So I will quickly also explain how exactly I'm going to use that. So for the deployment of that particular resource, I will use the Azure CLI, and I will use the deployment AZ deployment method. And then I can also define either SAP, which is the scope of the subscription, or I can also say group, which is the scope of the group. Yeah. Then you have the operation. So what is operation? So there are multiple different things available. So for example, you can do what if. If you come from Terraform, you may heard or you may use Terraform plan command. So the plan basically is exactly what if. So it allows you to evaluate your template against your environment and tell you what will happen. So if we do first AZ deployment group what if, and then we want to specify the group as well. So we will use Azure Bicep workshop. So exactly that group that we just created using the IRM templates. Yeah, we want to reuse that. Why not? And then we want to define the file for the template. So for the template file, we say -f main bicep. And also sometimes you may want to define parameters. So in this case, we have all the parameters defined over here, but maybe let's actually do something here. Let's actually do something like this, because we have already a resource group. So what we did, we just said that we want to reuse the location of the resource group for the location of the objects or resources that we're going to create in this exercise. All right, so, yeah, what you can do, you can define parameters from the command line as well, or you can also define the parameters from the file. So parameters, you can define that by the file. So yeah, let's run it as is, and let's see what happens. So keep in mind that I am logged into my to my Azure environment. So I used the AZ login, and I provided credentials. So typically, it's if I don't let's say use the service principal for my login. So typically, it redirects me to the browser, and then I use my Microsoft identity to confirm that me is me, and yeah, and then it generates the token and has that token on the machine for all my next commands. So if we explore this, so we see that this what if gave us the output saying that one resource change, one to create, and it also tells what exactly it is going to create. By the way, if you take a look at this, so this is our unique string. So we used the unique string function based on location. And this is what we will get as a result of provisioning that resource. We can also see that there is location West US. There is also kind storage v2. Yeah, by the way, there's a name of the storage count again. There is a SKU, which is premium local redundant storage. Yeah, it's just in one region. And then there is a type of the resource provider that will be used for that. So that's going to be storage and storage account. All right. So with that particular execution, we can basically figure out what exactly is going to happen when when we execute this template. So the other thing that I wanted to share is AZ deployment group validate. So that validate, it basically evaluates my template against multiple things, even against the uniqueness of the storage account. So it checks Microsoft Azure policies. So that's first. So make sure that there are no, let's say, limitations within my subscription to provision that resource, because there might be, if, for example, I provision a virtual machine of, I don't know, like from non-general purpose type, something which is maybe the GPU optimized, like based on NVIDIA, super expensive. So maybe I would like, as an administrator of the subscription, I would like to disable that opportunity. So I can do that with the policies of Azure. And then, so this validate will also evaluate the template against the policy. But so here we see that, the template is fine. Let me just quickly show you. So what might be a problem if I decide to go for the storage account name storage. So based on the template itself, it's not an issue, right? Because storage is a string, and we provide a string to the storage account. So that's exactly what the resource manager wants. However, if I execute this, you may guess that it's going to fail because of this. So the template deployment main is not valid according to the validation procedure, because the tracking ID is having the following issues. And the following issue is the following issue. Maybe it's not visible. So, but the following issue is the following. So, yeah, the issue is that the storage account might be already taken. And it's indeed, not that much unique storage name. So, it's taken. So that's how you can use validate to check your templates. So this is quite handy, especially in the later stages when you get your templates a little bit further. So when you start to build the infrastructure using CI/CD tools, like typically Azure DevOps or GitHub, for example. So you can use the pre-stages to validate your templates. And if for some reason they fail, so they fail the CI, the build process of the template, and then they will not go further with the deployment. I think it's quite a common practice. Anyway, so I just changed this back because I want unique. So maybe I can put a ST for storage. By the way, it's a naming convention. It's not mandatory, but I prefer to follow some sort of naming convention to define the resource names. Some time ago, somewhere in internet, I think in Twitter, I saw like a very interesting discussion about what exact naming convention we should follow in Azure. And that was an example, like, okay, typically you have a resource name, and then you have a region, and then you have an environment, and then you have a type of the resource that you provision. So basically you have a little name, and then you have a lot of suffixes or prefixes, like 553, and it's it's an interesting discussion. Anyway, so we're gonna go unique storage location with the ST postfix, and I will just change slightly my line here. So I will add group create finally. So group create. So AC deployment group creates -G for the resource group name, and then -F main bicep. So this will provision, hopefully without any problems, my resource. And if we go back to here, to refresh it, if we go to Azure Bicep Workshop, So here in the deployments, you do have up and running deployment here. And if we go to main, so we can actually see quite familiar experience. So typically you see this when you provision resource via the portal. So when you create a storage via the portal, you end up in exactly the same screen. So it actually does some steps for you. And then, yeah, it gives you the result. And then that result is basically going to that provisioned resource. So what we have here is this is the storage account name. So remember we talked about this idempotent. And if we scroll a little bit here, a little bit above, remember we did those validations, things like that. And then you see exactly the same, yes, exactly the same. And not exactly the same because I changed and I put ST at the end, right? But the rest is exactly the same. And if I have no changes in it, if I wouldn't change this RG to ST, so that's going to be exactly the same result. So this is what idempotent means. So any time if I run a template, so it's going to give me exactly the same. By the way, here, if I want to add anything, so if I want to, let's say, so let me think, what can I do here? Let's change this to GRS. So the GRS stands for the premium standard. Is it standard? Yeah, you see this also. The IntelliSense shows me these recommendations. So I'm going to standard GRS. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to redeploy that template to the existing infrastructure. And this actually should, but I'm not sure if I can actually change. Yeah, I think this is, yeah, this parameter is not possible to change. Maybe we can do something else. We can introduce quickly another thing, which is param tags, and we call them object, and we call them like this. And let's see, we want to use, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a few tags. So that will be purpose. I'm going to use, let's say, a bicep workshop. And then I will use another one, environment, for example, dev. So, and these are the params that I just defined. And I want to specify them for my object as well. I just did it like this. And if I run this again, so I first run what if. So just to give you what's the difference between the existing infrastructure and what we're going to add. So it should also indicate that to us quickly. All right, so we see that there will be two things added. Basically, is a tag parameter will be added to my resource, and I can just do it like this. Again, if I go here, and if I go to the resource group scope to the deployment, I can see that there is something up and running. By the way, just a heads up, but here we see the model, the deployment name main, and this is because yeah, the main is the name of my main template file. And in case if I do have references to models, like we will see in a minute, like in the deployment of the virtual machine and the environment for the application. So we will see that there will be multiple deployment names popping up here, and each model will do something for us. And by the way, so let's just quickly summarize this piece. If we go to the storage, so we immediately see that we've added tags here. So we have purpose tag Azure Bicep Workshop, and we have environment tag dev. So we just added them to this resource. So in a typical environment, you of course don't do this from the machine. So you use the CI/CD. For that, you use the repository to keep your templates, or maybe you use the container registry, for example, is a new approach that Microsoft suggests. So you keep your templates in ACR, in Azure Container Registry. You can also keep your templates in the template specs or template specs. This is quite a cool place to keep them. So you can also maintain different versions, and then this will act like a black box. So basically, you have your models, and then you provide a documentation saying that in order to provision a storage account, like in this example, you just need to take this model. So don't look inside. Doesn't matter what is inside. So we take care of this. So just provide parameters that are required. So for example, you need to pass the name, you need to pass the location, and you need to pass maybe tags optionally. So you get a tags like we did it, and the target for the deployment of resource. So you don't really care as the consumer of the model or of the whole templates what is going on there. So you just provide the templates, and this is typical approach in the large environment. So there is some CCOE department. They take care of these particular models. They are responsible for the best practice, for the maintenance of the templates, for the validation, basically for all the initial things, and you are responsible for data. So what exactly you're responsible for parameters, for what exactly you pass along the way to provision that resource. All right. So if we go a little bit back to this initial talk about the advantages of Bicep. So I mentioned that idempotent, also orchestration. That's a quite cool thing. So if you basically again take a look at the template here that we will provision in a second. So there are a bunch of different resources. So for instance, not this one, sorry. Infra Bicep, yes, this one. Bunch of different resources. So some of them depends on each other. Like for instance, I have a storage account and I also have a virtual machine. And that virtual machine includes actually a bunch of other sub resources. Like it includes a virtual machine itself. It includes also the public IP address, the virtual network, the NSG, etc., etc. And the cool thing about Bicep is that it orchestrates the whole set of models that you have that you want to provision in your resource manager, using your resource manager. So basically, it makes sure that everything is done in order. So before it starts to provision a virtual machine, it makes sure that it has the virtual network, it has the virtual interface card, the NSG, etc., etc. So this is a cool thing. So modularity, this is something that we just briefly discussed. Integration with Azure services such as Azure Policy, template specs, blueprints. So the policy was the policy. You can say that, well, you don't want these virtual machines of this type. So basically, Bicep will take a look at this and will say, well, sorry, we can't really do that. So there's also preview changes with what if. That's what we tried already. So there's also no state file. So if you come from, for example, Terraform, there is a Terraform state file that you typically keep. Well, if you provision that for Azure environment, so the approach would be to use the storage account and blob storage for that. So you keep the state of your infrastructure over there. So in Bicep case, you don't have this. So the state is actually in Azure in Resource Manager. So the state of your resources, the state of your provision is over there. So you don't really need to to think about it, state file or where to keep the state. There's also no cost, by the way. There's a good, oops. There's a good guide explaining you where and how you can contribute. So there are actually a lot of issues right now. Well, in the sense that they require maybe some functionality to be added, and there's also the documentation how you can actually get started with the contribution. All right, so these are some of the initial things that I wanted to outline. Are there any questions?
Just maybe a quick question from me. So we are creating here this main.bicep file. Is there a way to split it in multiple to kind of keep your different resources in separate places, or it doesn't make sense from engineering?
No, it does. That's exactly all about models. I guess Alex mentioned that in his question. So it's like here. So you basically define what is called a model. So in the bicep file, you can define two things. So you can define a resource. So here in the previous example, in that little example, we used a resource. So in the resource, you define a resource and you start working with that. So here in my full stack application bicep template that we will provision soon, I have model. So I refer, instead of resource, I refer to model, and I give a name to the model. So there is a symbolic name of the model, which will help me to refer to this model later on from other models, for example. And there is a reference to the model itself. And the model itself is the other bicep file. So on the left-hand side, you can see the folder models. And then here you have a reference to this storage model, which I was referring from the main file. And in that model, I start to provision resources. So here we see already there's a resource, storage account, for example. We call this resource provider with that API version, and we define things that we want. But that's the modularity, and then that's the typical approach, because it helps you to reuse things and make the whole big one file much simpler to read, and reuse models, maybe provision models multiple times. Let's say if you want a virtual machine, or maybe parts of that virtual machine provisioned twice instead of once. Yeah.
Cool. I have a few simple questions, I think. Well, at first you started with this Postman way of creating things with API. So I was wondering, is that something commonly used? Because the workspace looks very cool. Is that something that you use sometimes to provision resources in Azure, or it's just to show the functionality of API in Microsoft?
Yeah, so we use that quite often. So for example, at this moment, we work on some automation for the clients, and we provision resources in Azure DevOps. And those Azure DevOps resources, they also have some references to the bigger Azure, to regular Azure. And we built some sort of tool that will help them to provision a set of things. So basically provision the project in Azure DevOps, and then create a service connection. That service connection is based on service principle that we need to generate. We also need to do some assignments to that, put it to a proper scope, for example, to the subscription or management group. And we all do this via the REST API. Yeah, so we have like a little .NET, so you say C#, a bunch of C# functions, and then they just trigger those API endpoints to provision things that we request. Yeah, but very commonly, yeah.
All right. Then one big compliment on how things organized, the workspace in VS Code, very nicely organized space there. Maybe a little question. I think you will explain it maybe further, but for this sort of deployment that you're gonna show in this application set, right? You have a front end, back end, and database. Did you use some prepared templates, or you have to write it all from scratch, basically?
They're actually prepared templates. So if you go to a Bicep here, to the Bicep Git repo, examples, you get examples. So you got a lot of examples over here. So basically you can, how we call, yeah, you can take a look at those examples and get some inspiration. And then start to build your template. So in my case, well, because I wanted to keep everything as simple as possible, so it's going to be easy to understand and to follow. So what I did, I just created a list of things that I need to provision in order to run my application, and I typically use the built-in IntelliSense, so which actually recommends me what I'm typing. So if I say virtual machine, let's use something simpler, storage. So you see, it's like you can start doing it like this. So, and it actually predefines already some fields. So typically these are the fields that required, and then you just fill up those fields and build it. So this is how I did, because I wanted to practice with this, yeah, in order to prepare that. But yeah, feel free to basically reuse those
Nice.
blueprints.
Yeah, we saw in Pulumi a similar approach, right? Like they have a lot of templates in GitHub, how you can provision your infrastructure. Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Yep. Sure. So yeah, I'll just return back. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to also, because these are all let's say the basics, and I really yeah would like to get to the bottom of everything, like how exactly it's organized. So let's just so this is the piece that we just yeah that we just tried together. So let me just show you a little trick that might be interesting for you. So I'm going to, so we have two files over here. So we get a main bicep, main bicep. So that's what we just used. There's also another file, but I'm going to delete that file. So it's actually main JSON. So let me just delete that. Let me make sure there's nothing special. Nothing special. Basically, it's the, I just did an exercise to convert that to RM template. But let me just quickly do something interesting. So there is an expert command. Oops. There is an expert command that allows you to look in your resource, let's say in your research group, and then it can help you to export the whole template of that resource group to the file. So it's basically a backwards, or the reverse approach. So we can see how exactly this resource is made. So for that, I will just quickly type this. So AZ group list O table. So this is the resource group that we have at the moment. So again, this is the resource group that we provisioned earlier using the REST API. And then we also deploys a single storage account to that resource group. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to export the template of that resource group and everything which is inside. And look at this, how cool it is. So you can do it AZ expert, AZ group expert, and then you define the group itself, which is Azure Bicep workshop. And I could use my top completion, which works fine. And I can do it like this, main JSON. So again, I don't have that JSON anymore because I deleted that. So sandbox, yeah, main JSON. Let's see if it works. All right, so it says that there's something wrong with this, but that's because in the storage account, you can also do some other things like file services, which gives you network share. You can also do the queue services, table, etc., etc. So we haven't provisioned them. So we only have blob, and that's why it says this to us, but we can just ignore this. So this is, if you are familiar with IRM template, this is the IRM template. And if you take a look at this, and if you compare this with the Bicep, which maybe I can put it in a separate window, so you can compare that. So initially it was 22 lines. So now, after expert, it's actually 71. Of course, that might be a little bit more than we initially submitted. Like we do see some course, some cross-origin rules. We also see, of course, the tags, but tags we also here. But basically, this is the IRM template. This is the initial way of working of infrastructure as code with Azure. So this is how it all started. And this is on the right-hand side, you see this new DSLR, the domain specific language, Bicep. So what exactly it gives you. So if you compare that, that's definitely much easier. So now what we can do, we can convert that using, there's a Bicep decompiler or transpiler back to our Bicep format. So for that, we do AZ Bicep decompile, and we do, we basically define that main JSON file. So I guess it will overwrite my Bicep template now. Let's see. Oh yeah, so it just changed, as you can see. It just changed. Of course, it gives me more because there's also, if we close this and open it, of course, it gives me more. So basically, it gives me a storage account itself. And also it gives me the blob services, because within blob services, it also does some default configurations. And those default configurations are here. But the initial, so what we had initially, that basically the equivalent of that Bicep template that I showed you. By the way, I do have over here, so I'm pretty sure, so you have seen this before. So there is a playground that might be a good idea to explore. So basically with that playground, you can compare and you can play with Bicep and IRM templates and see where it brings you. So on the left-hand side, there will be some sort of blueprint now. So it's a Microsoft's initiative. So that link is available in their documentation. And I'm just going to grab that initial Bicep template that I used. Oops. It takes some time to open it, but let's see. Yeah, so there's some.
If it doesn't open, I just maybe a little workaround. You can try to open it in incognito mode.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, by the way, Alex, to your question, if there are any examples, so in that playground, you actually can see a lot of already typical architectures that you may want to spin up in Azure. So yeah, you can just switch to that. So in my case, I would like to delete everything. So this is on the left-hand side, you have empty Bicep template. On the right-hand side, you have the IRM templates. And if I paste my piece with what we deployed earlier.
So he just replied that he suggests to meet the other day for the second part. I think it's perfect, actually.
Yeah. Let's just wrap it for today. Yeah. I think it was a great introduction part into Bicep. So Evgeny really started from scratch, so that it's clear why we need it and how to use it and how to start doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Looking forward to see him in next part. But indeed, that covers. Yeah, I mean, for us, it's perfect because we did this DevOps dive in last couple of events with Andrew, so that covers another blank spots for me, let's say. So yeah, it's another cool technology, and yeah, I don't know how to summarize it. It's we should wait Evgeny. I think the disadvantage of that is that you stick to Azure. Comparing to Terraform, it's not the case, for example. But yeah, cool technology and looking good.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, so there's a link to the repository which Evgeny created. You posted it in the on YouTube, I suppose. So feel free to get there. And yeah, so I'm pretty interested on like how all these tools compare. So about Pulumi, I have almost no idea. Pulumi, Terraform, Bicep, like what is easier for a newbie like me? Yeah, so let's wait for the second part with
Yeah,
Evgeny.
stay tuned and join us next Saturday. Probably it will be about system design interviews, but we're gonna see that.
Yeah, and let's wait for the second part of Evgeny. Let's see. So
Yeah,
coming
exactly.
soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a great Saturday, everyone.
Yeah, and a great